The night was alive with the sound of the storm as Daniel Parker's car struggled through the torrential rain. Lightning illuminated the road in jagged bursts, casting eerie shadows that danced along the forest's edge. The storm had come out of nowhere, unleashing a deluge that had caught Daniel off guard. He had been driving to a remote cabin for a weekend getaway, seeking solitude and escape from the chaos of his life. Instead, he found himself lost in the heart of the tempest. The wipers barely made a dent in the sheets of rain assaulting his windshield. Every few seconds, the road would disappear from view, replaced by a blinding wall of water. His GPS had lost signal hours ago, and the only signs of civilization were sporadic weather-beaten mile markers. As he rounded a bend, a flickering light caught his eye through the rain. It was faint but unmistakable, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. He slowed the car and squinted through the windshield, trying to make out the source of the light. It seemed to be coming from a large, old house perched on a hill just off the road. Daniel's heart leapt with relief. He pulled the car over and drove up a muddy path toward the house. The tires slipped and skidded, but he managed to reach the front of the grand, if somewhat dilapidated mansion. The house was imposing, with towering spires and ivy-covered walls. Its windows glowed warmly, offering a stark contrast to the storm's fury. He knocked on the heavy oak door, and after a few moments it creaked open to reveal an elderly woman. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes were sharp and alert. She looked Daniel up and down, taking in his drenched state. Come in, she said, her voice a raspy whisper. You must be freezing." Daniel stepped inside, grateful for the warmth and dryness. The foyer was dimly lit by an old chandelier, its crystals reflecting the soft light of a roaring fireplace. The walls were adorned with antique portraits and old tapestries, adding to the house's eerie charm. The woman led him into a cozy parlor. "I'm Edith," she introduced herself. "I wasn't expecting visitors tonight, but you're welcome to stay." "Thank you," Daniel said, shaking off the rain from his coat. "I didn't expect to find anyone out here. The storm made my trip impossible." Edith nodded sympathetically. "Yes, it's a nasty one. I haven't seen rain like this in years. You're lucky you found us." As Edith bustled about preparing tea, Daniel took a closer look at his surroundings. The parlor was filled with antique furniture, dusty bookshelves, and a large, ornate mirror that seemed to dominate the room. The mirror's surface was foggy, and Daniel wondered if it had been cleaned recently. Edith returned with a tray of steaming mugs. "Here you go. This should warm you up." Daniel accepted the tea gratefully, savoring the warmth as he sipped it. "This place is amazing. How long have you lived here?" Edith's eyes grew distant for a moment. "This house has been in my family for generations. It's old, but it has a certain charm. Don't you think?" Daniel nodded, though he couldn't shake a creeping sense of unease. The house, with its shadowy corners and strange atmosphere, felt like something out of a Gothic novel. As the night wore on, the storm outside showed no signs of letting up. The rain pounded against the windows and the wind howled through the trees. Edith excused herself to attend to some chores, leaving Daniel alone in the parlor. The more Daniel explored the room, the more he felt a strange, unsettling energy. The portraits on the walls seemed to watch him, their eyes following his every move. The old books on the shelves were filled with titles he didn't recognize, their spines covered in dust. He noticed a door partially hidden behind a heavy curtain. Curiosity getting the better of him, Daniel pushed the curtain aside and opened the door. It led to a small, dimly lit hallway. The walls were lined with faded wallpaper, and the air was thick with the musty scent of age. As he wandered down the hallway, he came across a series of old, locked doors. They were covered in cobwebs and seemed to have been unused for years. At the end of the hallway was a large wooden door with a brass keyhole. Daniel was about to examine it more closely when he heard footsteps approaching. He quickly stepped back into the parlor just as Edith reappeared. She looked at him with a hint of suspicion. "Is everything all right?" Daniel nodded, though he felt a bit disoriented. "Yes, just exploring. This place is fascinating." Edith gave a tight smile. "I'm glad you're interested. There's a lot of history here, though some of it is best left undisturbed." As the evening wore on, Daniel's fatigue began to set in. Edith showed him to a guest room on the second floor. The room was quaint and old-fashioned, with a large four-poster bed and antique furniture. The rain continued to beat against the window, creating a soothing but eerie backdrop. After a long day, Daniel fell into a deep sleep, the storm outside becoming a distant, comforting lullaby. But as the night deepened, he began to dream. The dream was strange and disjointed, filled with shadowy figures and whispered voices. He saw glimpses of the old house, but everything was distorted and unfamiliar. He awoke with a start, drenched in sweat. The room was dark, lit only by the occasional flash of lightning outside. He tried to calm himself and drifted back to sleep, but the feeling of being watched persisted. Morning came and the storm had finally subsided. The sky was overcast, but the rain had turned to a light drizzle. Daniel awoke feeling disoriented, his dream still fresh in his mind. He got out of bed and made his way downstairs. The house was eerily quiet. Edith was nowhere to be seen. Daniel checked the kitchen and the parlor, but there was no sign of her. He called out for her, but the silence that greeted him was unnerving. He decided to explore the house further, hoping to find any clues about Edith's whereabouts. The library, located on the ground floor, was a large, dimly lit room filled with old books and dusty furniture. Daniel browsed through the shelves, looking for anything that might explain the odd atmosphere of the house. As he searched, he noticed a small desk in the corner of the room. It was cluttered with papers and old photographs. Daniel sifted through the papers, finding a series of letters written in elegant script. They were addressed to various members of Edith's family and spoke of strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena in the house. One letter in particular caught Daniel's eye. It was written by someone named Margaret and detailed an event that had occurred many years ago. Margaret wrote about a series of disappearances that had plagued the house, including her own daughter, who had vanished without a trace. The letter mentioned strange noises, shadowy figures, and an oppressive sense of dread that seemed to permeate the house. Daniel's heart raced as he read the letter. It seemed to confirm the unsettling feeling he had experienced the night before. The house, it seemed, had a dark and troubled history. He continued his search, exploring the rooms he hadn't yet visited. The attic was filled with old trunks, boxes, and forgotten artifacts. Daniel rummaged through the items, finding old clothes, furniture, and more photographs. One photograph, in particular, stood out, a group photo of Edith and her family taken many years ago. Edith appeared much younger, but the other faces in the photograph were unfamiliar. As he examined the photograph, Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. The faces in the photograph seemed to be watching him, their expressions frozen in time. He noticed something odd about the background. It appeared to show a different part of the house, a room he hadn't seen before. Daniel's curiosity was piqued. He returned to the parlor and noticed a large, ornate mirror that seemed to dominate the room. He felt drawn to it, as if it held some secret. He examined the mirror closely and noticed a small, hidden compartment behind it. The compartment was empty, but Daniel felt a growing sense of unease. Determined to uncover more about the house's secrets, Daniel decided to investigate the hidden room mentioned in the letter. He remembered the large wooden door at the end of the hallway and decided to see if he could open it. Using a combination of tools he found in the attic, Daniel managed to pry the door open. The door creaked loudly and Daniel felt a shiver of anticipation as he stepped inside. The room was dark and musty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling and old furniture covered in sheets. The air was thick with dust and the floor creaked with every step. Daniel turned on his flashlight and began to explore the room. He found several old trunks and boxes as well as a large antique desk. The desk was cluttered with papers, old letters, and faded photographs. Daniel began to sift through the items, looking